some time for questions at the end. So, go ahead, Ms. Margaret.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I wonder if we could just begin with a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. You settled into that beautifully. Just like your kids do. So when Chris and Penny came to talk to us about this morning, we suggested we move it into this venue. We used to have this event in here, and we also used to have this event without chairs. So we used to do a little more mingling, a little more moving around. So what I'm hoping is to be able to do a little bit of both today. So I've kept my remarks brief, as has Lori, and then Shannon will be here to give some brief remarks. And then I hope we'll get a chance at the end to talk a little bit, and then we can address your particular concerns or questions or whatever, what have you. So it is a very busy time in the upper school, and Chris and Penny had some ideas about what we might share with you. And the first thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is the number of new students we have in the upper school. We have 30 new ninth graders in the upper school, which is the largest influx of new students we've ever had. And I have to say, I'm delighted with the way that's going. They've brought a lot of energy, they've brought a lot of talent, they've just brought a lot of positivity into a grade that was already in fabulous shape. So things are better in the ninth grade than I thought they might be at this point. I also took a look at their report cards. The report cards are very good. I know sometimes parents are a little surprised the grades aren't exactly what they were in 8th grade. There's typically a little bit of an adjustment, and we've found in the past that there is an ascendant trend in the 9th grade from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So, just kidding. Now they have to work for that, of course, but it typically happens. So we also have 4 new students in the 10th grade and 4 new students in the 11th grade, some of whom are returning to Friends Central from having been away. I'm also excited to tell you that we have one guest student, one visiting student who's going to start in the new year, and she's coming to us from Tanzania. So she'll be here for from January through spring break. We're excited to have her, and she'll be joining the 10th grade. I also thought I'd talk a little bit about something that's on the minds, maybe particularly the minds of the parents of seniors and the parents of juniors, and that is the whole college process. I am the parent of a senior myself, also the parent of a 10th grader and an 8th grader, but with regards to the college process, the seniors, as you know, have been working very hard on this. They've been working with their college counselors since last year. They did a lot of work over the summer, and now they are starting to hear from the schools to which they applied early decision, early action. So a lot of kids are on pins and needles this week. But what I wanted to say is, I think everybody's going to wind up in a great place, and everybody's going to wind up happy. We have a lot of parents here who have children who are in college. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk with you about their child's experience. Lori Noah herself has a couple of kids, well, one student in college and a couple who graduated. So she'd be happy to talk about that as well. And with the 11th grade, I teach 11th grade. So I'm with the 11th graders every day. And I feel their stress. I feel their anxiety, and I try to do my best to kind of diminish it and talk them down. We have a very nice relationship. And I will say that I haven't really talked with them at all about college, and I'm not going to do that until after the seniors are all set. That's when the process should begin for them. Of course, they're already fantasizing. Some of them have visited schools, and that's fabulous. But they put enough pressure on themselves that I certainly feel like I don't have to add any of that as a teacher, as an administrator. And I know that parents are trying to manage that at home as well. And the 9th and 10th graders, I hope they're not even considering it. I hope they're just here, doing their best, enjoying themselves, trying to be as successful as they can be, as active and involved as they can be, and not worried about the college situation yet. So I also wanted to talk about the process of how you go about getting help if you need it in the upper school. So there are a couple things to do. So if your child is having a hard time in a particular class, the best person to contact would be the teacher of that class. And probably the best way to do it is through email. You can go on the website, you can find everyone's email address. It's typically the first initial of the first name and the last name at friendscentral.org. Contact the teacher directly. And if it's a broader problem, if it's something where your child is working too hard, or your child is really having a hard time, getting through the day, or trying to figure out what clubs she should be involved in, or having difficulty managing his first upper school sport and his workload, then the person to contact would be your child's advisor. And your child's advisor is your homeroom teacher, as you know. And if you forget all that, or if you're not satisfied with that, you can always contact me, Bill Kennedy. I'm in the upper school office. My email address is wkennedy@friendscentral.org. Happy to talk with you, happy to help anytime, anyway. So thank you for coming again. I'm going to turn things over to Lori, and I look forward to talking with you after in the more mingly side of things.
Morning. I just think it's so great when somebody really does go briefly before the second speaker. There's no pressure to somehow build beyond my index card. Plus, I'm now really clear that we're all distracted by the fashion show going on behind us. So really not much to think about. So I was also really grateful to have a chance to meet with Chris and Penny and talk a little bit about what it was that parents were interested in hearing about, because there's a vast array of things that we can talk about. So Bill and I divided them up. So I have a few topics that also came up, I guess, as things that parents were interested in hearing a little bit more about. So the first one was that I did also want to say that as we did last year, we are going to ask teachers to collect feedback from all the students in all their classes around the mid-year. So we did that last year. We had kind of a uniform set of questions, and then departments had added questions that might be specific to the subject that they taught. And we asked all the teachers to distribute them to all their students. Students responded electronically, anonymously, and then we asked teachers to look at their own feedback and write a reflection about it, and then meet with me, share that with me and their department chair, and then meet with me to talk about what they got from it, and to establish a couple of concrete goals as a result of that feedback. So we're doing it again this year. The difference, I guess, because it's the second year, is that this fall when I met with teachers, we set some goals specifically sort of around that. So that's coming, and so when your kids tell you that that's happening, that's what's going on. In terms of kind of faculty evaluation, what happens every year is that teachers in departments are visited by their department chairs, set up a time, talk about a class, ask about what the goals are for the class, visit the class, meet afterwards. Sometimes there's written feedback from that, sometimes just a conversation. I visit all department chairs, teachers who are not in a department, so I visit some of the rotation classes, for instance. And I try to see everybody every couple of years, at least. It's really fun. I love going to classes. I'm a teacher myself. It's really interesting to see what other people are doing in the classroom. And that you can also see things that teachers, when you're teaching a class, there's a lot of stimulus. You don't necessarily notice everything that you want to about a class. So it's always very interesting to talk with somebody who's seen your class about what's going on. The second thing that's been new this year is the schedule. So we've been collecting feedback about the schedule also, now that we finished a trimester. I was supposed to go talk with the student council Tuesday morning, but instead I was watching it snow outside my window. And we're going to reschedule that to January. But the student council's been collecting some student feedback. I've been collecting some teacher feedback. And basically, although there are some things that people think could be improved, I hear through the grapevine that the recess is not long enough, for instance. In general, it seems like it's working pretty well, and it has done some of the things that we were really hoping for. But I'll have more to say about that after I collect more of that feedback on the second side of my card. We've been doing a lot of diversity work this year in the upper school, and I know you've been hearing about that. We had a speaker, the diversity educator at Brooklyn Friends School. His name is Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. You can follow him on Twitter. And he has a website if you want to know more about him. But he was here for a day, sponsored by the Upper School Diversity Committee. Worked with students, worked with faculty, worked especially with affinity groups. We have a new kind of umbrella affinity group called Students for Diversity that has several students who are its clerks, but also draws from the leadership of all the other affinity groups, so the leadership from GSA, from DSF, from Latino students, They are coming to do some training for faculty. They brought us queries at our meeting for worship yesterday, which was actually a great meeting for worship. I think largely because of that. The Upper School Diversity Committee is asking all teachers to read a book called The Cosmopolitan Canopy over the winter break to talk about in the spring. And I don't know if anybody's aware of that book, really. It's by Elijah Anderson. He's an ethnographer, sort of urban sociologist. And his work centers around Penn. So he's written several books, Philadelphia. He's written several books. The most recent, this one, is about how public spaces in Philadelphia are or are not welcoming to a kind of diverse interaction between people. And the places that are, he was very interested in talking to people about why? Like why are why is Rittenhouse Square kind of a multicultural place and the gallery kind of isn't? And why is Reading Terminal, so it's a really interesting book. I haven't read all of it, and it's somewhat academic. But the parts that are really interesting, I think, are about what the people he talked to seem to think were the reasons for these experiences. And since obviously we aspire here to be a cosmopolitan canopy, we're really interested in this book. So those were my 3 topics. I'm also really looking forward to talking more with you after the formal part of the program. And thanks for being here. I think some of you are maybe taking your coats off, which seems to be a good sign. And I think I'm introducing Shannon Schuster. Oh, The Cosmopolitan Canopy, and it's by Elijah Anderson. You'll be hearing more from me.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I love this space, so I walked in today. I'm so glad we're in this room. Not that I don't love the cafeteria, but I think this is a little bit nicer. I have 2 updates for you. The first is on the upper school principal search, and Craig Sellers couldn't be here today. We actually have our finalists, our second finalist for lower school principal on the lower school campus. So he is over with parents interviewing the lower school candidate, and I said that I would be here and help communicate the upper school search. So we have a great committee of 10 faculty and staff and 4 clerks, which is a lot of clerks, but it's really 2 clerks. Bill Darling, who's an upper school math teacher, and Christina Perez are the 2 clerks, and Craig and I are also on the committee in kind of clerks, but we try to take a step back, and then 10 faculty and staff. And it's a really nice, diverse group of people, from very experienced teachers to less experienced to someone in admission, and we try to get a really robust vantage point from the committee. So we had about 100 people apply for the position. We reduced those resumes to about 18 or 19, and we then took those to the committee, and the committee narrowed it to 15 or 16, I believe, and we are Skype interviewing 15 candidates today, starting at 3:10. So it is a little bit of a logistics dream for me. I love logistics. So we will be running 5 Skypes every 30 minutes in 5 different classrooms. And at 4:20 is the last one, so at about 4:50 we will have completed 15 Skype interviews. And then the committee will go back into a room and we'll review how it went and try to narrow that group to probably 5 or 6 that we will bring back to campus for semi-finalist interviews for probably a 1-day visit. And then we will narrow that to 2, 3, or 4 that we will bring back for 2-day visits. So we will invite parents once we get to that finalist stage, and then they're here for 2 days. It's very hard in the 1-day visit because we have about 8 or 9 hours with them, and they have to tour campus. The list is insanity. So it's really an endurance test when you interview for these kind of jobs. So when they come back for the 2-day, it's a little bit easier to include parents, and we're modeling this search really after the middle school search last year and the lower school search that we're completing right now. So in lower school, we've been giving really parents 2 opportunities when the candidates come, and one is really open and one is a little bit more structured. So hopefully all of you can make it to those visits. Excuse me. So I will take questions at the end, but I did want to let you know I have to be on lower school at 9:30 to interview the candidate. So if I am running out of here at 9:15, that's why. And if you have questions and we didn't get a chance to answer it, just email me and That's upper school principal. So the real thing I think everyone's excited to talk about is the iPad. I'm excited to tell you about it. I want to talk a little bit big picture before we get into the nitty-gritty, because for me, this is not about iPads, this is about teaching and learning. And I only have one priority in my job, and that's making sure that students get a great experience and have the best experience around teaching and learning, and that they leave us really well equipped for college and for life. So it's not really for me about the iPad, it's about technology. And before we talk about the technology, I want to acknowledge the fact that the reason all of you send your children here are because of the faculty. I always say I'm the least important person that works here. The most important people are the teachers, because those are the people who are interacting with the children. And your students are having a great experience here because the faculty care about your children and build really great relationships with the children. That is still a hallmark of the school, and that will never change. That is absolutely the priority. When you talk to faculty, they will tell you that that's their priority. When I talk to parents, they say the reason I love this school is because of the relationships my child or children have had with the faculty. So technology is not meant to change that at all. It's meant to enhance the learning. And you can do both. I think there's an image that when you have a piece of technology, it becomes this idea where the children are staring at the screen and the teacher's sitting at their desk, I don't know, doing what. But that's not how we're envisioning incorporating technology. So I'll talk a little bit more at the end about how I think it's going to work. But I want to start by saying that we have no intention of changing the relationships, and that we still hold that to be the paramount of the school. So for me, I love to use the analogy of a pencil. If you talked to me before, I always use this analogy. We used to have chalk and slate. I watched Little House on the Prairie growing up, and they had these chalks and slate, right? And I was thinking recently about that, and how if you were a teacher in the chalk and slate world, and suddenly pencils and paper became more readily available and cost effective, because initially they were expensive. Imagine how different that was. Okay, if you have a slate that's, I don't know, this big, maybe it's even bigger, those students were never writing more than maybe a sentence. I mean, you can't fit more than a sentence on a slate. They could never keep their work. As soon as they finished it, they had to erase it to do the next thing. The teacher could never collect the work. You could never do big math problems. You could never do anything that required more than, like I said, writing a sentence. So imagine when pencil and paper became prevalent, how big of a cultural shift that was in a school. For the first time, teachers could collect work. For the first time, they could write long pieces. They could do these big problems. So for me, technology is the next big thing that has come out that is going to enable us to do more things. It's still a tool, and I would never replace a teacher with a tool. So a great teacher with a stick under a tree is still better than a mediocre teacher with technology. So it is still about having a great teacher, but great teachers find great ways to incorporate technology and make the experience even deeper. But it's just a tool. It's just a phenomenal pencil. So sometimes as a teacher, I will say to students, I want you to put your pencils down, because I want them to not do anything but look at me, or look at the board, or look at each other because we're talking about something. There will be times that we will say, put your technology away, because right now we're going to have a discussion, or right now we're going to do something else. So it's still just a tool. We have to be probably a little bit more careful with it, because it is more distracting, and there are some things that they can do with technology that they couldn't do with a pencil, but you can stab someone with a pencil, which can be very dangerous. So there are some things that I'm sure, chalk was not nearly as dangerous as the pencil was when we went to that. I feel like it's no longer a choice whether or not we adopt technology. I think it's an obligation we have as a school. We are sending our children to college where they will have to be able to incorporate technology. They will have books that are electronic. They are not going to be able to buy all hardback. I want children to have an experience here with that before we send them off, so that they're savvy on how to take notes in an electronic book, that they've had the experience of having a piece of technology in front of the teacher. I spoke to a parent a few years ago who said, my son goes to Harvard, and they have banned laptops in the freshman lectures. Isn't that proof to you that technology is bad? I said, no, it's appalling to me that Harvard isn't worried that their lectures are so boring that the kids are on Facebook instead of listening to the lecture. And when teachers come to me and say, my previous school was 1-to-1, and they would say, some of the kids aren't listening to me, they're doing other things. I thought, did you think to look at your lesson? I get bored. Sometimes when I'm in a meeting, don't tell Craig, and I get bored, I think maybe I could just check my email quickly because I'm so not stimulated by what's happening in this meeting. I try not to do that because it's not respectful. But when kids get distracted, I do want to look at what's happening in the classroom and why is it so easy to tune out. A great lesson is going to bring kids in. So when teachers say to me, what's happening? I want to say, well, what was your lesson like? In addition, I hope that at any point, teachers are walking around the room, even now, to make sure all the students are engaged. We have some great students here, but I'm sure some of them are great at staring at the teacher and looking engaged, and they're really thinking about what they're wearing tomorrow night. So, when you talk about distraction, we've gotten away with a lot of distraction over the years. A great lesson brings kids in. So you can fake it. I used to doodle in school. I also have some attention issues myself. I doodled. I used to write notes a lot in middle school. I had all sorts of tricks that I did when I was not stimulated or when I was actually trying to get my attention together. So you're right. I think it's going to be a distraction, but it's something I think we can work on. And again, I want to teach kids how to deal with that. It's distracting at work when you could go shopping. And we know that there are some young people that get hired and then the bosses say, I walked in and this employee was shopping instead of doing their work. I hope that by having technology in school, we're going to teach kids that's disrespectful, or that's not acceptable, or that's not something that we want you to do as an adult. I worry that no one else will teach kids all of these things. I don't think when they go to college, the professors say, now let's talk first about how this is going to work. You don't want to do this. I wish they were, but I don't think they are. And I think we have this great opportunity to teach kids how to live with technology and not be distracted. There's a great feature you can put, I think on all computers, but there's two that I can think of, and the names are escaping me, but they'll come to me, that you can help keep yourself from going on the internet. So if you're a kid that's distracted by the internet, let's say it's email, or I know Facebook is no longer cool, let's say it's Twitter, or whatever it is, the latest thing, you can time yourself and say, I know I need to study, I'm not going to let myself on the internet for an hour. And you cannot break out of that. Once you've set your timer, it will not let you on the internet until that time is up. So when kids struggle with distraction, that's one of the first things I suggest that they do. Do you know about this feature? This might be something that's really helpful. Like I said, I have one of those name things that when I'm thinking about a name, like if I don't know my husband's name when he's next to me, so I will think of it by the end of the day. I will, and we'll put that on our website as well. But there are things that I want to teach kids how to do so that they are equipped to go to college. Because if you think they can be distracted in high school, imagine when you go to college and there's actually no adult around you for most of the day, how distracting the technology can be. So I'd love the opportunity for us to teach them how to be safe on the internet. I'd love to teach them how to have a positive digital footprint. And I'd love to teach them how not to be distracted and what are good manners around technology. So when cell phones first came out, high schools were obsessed with trying to say you can't bring them to school. And all these schools became police on cell phones. And all we did was go, got one, got one, got one. And we made this big bin of cell phones in the main office because kids kept bringing them in. And then kids would get really good at keeping them in their pocket and trying to do things, right? And then we got to the point where we said, actually, let's let them bring the cell phones and let's teach them how to be respectful. You're not going to answer your cell phone in the middle of class because that's not respectful. I hope none of you, unless it's an emergency, none of you would probably answer your cell phone right now because that's not good manners. So again, we want to actually allow it in because this is the world, and then we want to teach them this is how you function with technology in the world, instead of saying this is a glass bubble called school. It's nothing like the real world, and then we go, good luck. See if you can survive. So I'm really passionate that I want to use school as an opportunity to teach kids how to survive and do well and succeed and thrive in the next level. So there are some questions that are surfacing more often than others, and I thought I would try to get through those. They might be your questions. If they're not, I'm happy to do those at the end, but I thought these are the ones that I'm hearing the most often. The first is financial aid. So in the very long email that we sent last month, there was a drop-down on financial aid, but if you did not see it, there is a letter that either went out, I don't think anyone here sent the letter. it either went out or is going out to financial aid families that says if you are interested in applying to have assistance towards the iPad, check here, and then when you get your financial aid award, it will state whether or not or how much of the iPad is also covered. So we have budgeted a really nice chunk of money for those families. I think it's more than generous. I think we will have less families apply for it than we've budgeted for. So it will not be an issue of equity from our view, and that we budgeted to cover that. The second is seniors. I'm talking about rising seniors, so families who have a junior right now and rising seniors. And a lot of families have said, I don't really want to buy a device for only 1 year because I'm not sure it's the device that they need in college. And so what we're working on right now is a rental program for seniors for next year where you won't have to incur the entire cost of an iPad. I don't know the exact cost right now. The only thing I know is that it will be the Air version, because what we have to do is buy iPads that we want to keep because they will be ours after you turn them back in as a rental, and we need them to go into our fleet of faculty and lower school iPads, and so there won't be a choice. So if you choose to do the rental program, you can't say, oh, I want the black one, and I want this size of that. You know, it's going to be, this is the version you get in the rental, but it will be an option, and so we should have that information out, I'd say by the beginning of February, and you will just say, yes, I'm interested. You are kind of committing because we have to purchase them, but you will say, yes, I'm interested in renting, and then we will issue it to you in probably August. So that is for seniors. Some parents have said, my child doesn't want to take notes on an iPad. They want to take notes on paper. That's super. I think the best environment is one where we have choice. So if you like to take notes on paper, you should take notes on paper. If you like to type, you should type. If you are a child, and when I speak to students, I was telling this to a student, he said, that's me. I said, there are some students who actually aren't good at taking notes. It's hard for them to listen and get the notes down, right? Not everyone, I actually learn best that way. I have to take notes while I'm listening, that's how I retain it. But for some students, they have to just listen. Well, with technology, it's really easy to share notes. And I hope that in some classes, teachers will say, you don't all have to take the notes. And if you're really good at taking notes, you can take the notes and then you can share them electronically. And if they're electronically, you just go share. And it's really easy. I actually came from a school where we used to give carbon paper to kids. So the kid who was good at taking notes would put it on carbon and then we'd tear it out for the kid who wasn't as good at taking notes. It's so much easier now with technology. So that's about taking notes. I hope that that theme is really prevalent in all the classes. I hope that there's choice. I hope that now, sometimes instead of maybe just writing down your answers, what if you could voice record them? You know, I think, I'll get into a little bit later all the things that I think we're going to do with technology, but I hope it enables choice. I hope that kids don't know that now I have to do anything. It's that now I have choice about how I'll be assessed or how I'll turn it in. Textbooks. This is a big school, and we have a lot of textbooks. We use state money to purchase the majority of our textbooks. We do try to be cognizant of the fact they cost a lot of money, and even though the state provides some of that money, we don't just flippantly go, oh, we're going to get a new book because the wind blew and we feel like it. So we do try to get a few years out of our textbooks. And so for textbooks that are up for renewal, if it's this, you know, this was the last year we were going to use that book, we are certainly going to try to move into the ebook for that replacement. But if we just bought a book last year, we will probably try to get a few more years out of it before we replace it. When it comes to novels, the English teachers right now, we have 2 English teachers here, so you all can chime in, are looking at how to read on a novel and take guided notes in a novel and do all the things that we do in a typical novel. But when I spoke to Liza, who's the English department chair, we also talked about what if we had every child do it, let's call it the old-fashioned way first, right? So the first book next year is in a hard, you know, soft cover, I guess, and we do it the old way. And maybe in the next book, we all do an ebook form. And then every child has both experiences. And then book 3, we say, now choose. Now that you've had both experiences, we've taught you how to do both. And now you're going to choose the one that works best for you. There are a million ways to take notes in an ebook. And we want kids to be aware of that. There are some kids who just don't realize that you can put notes in the margin, you can highlight, and we want them to actually have experience with that. So for some kids, it's going to be great to organize. I don't know if any of you are ebook readers, but when you highlight, I use, well, I have a Kindle and I have a Kindle app and an iBook app. When you highlight, you can also click, I just want to see all my highlights, and it'll actually list all the highlights that you did in the whole book. So for me, I would love that when I want to write an English paper, to be able to pull up all my highlights, but maybe some kids will say, I don't like that. I like There's some kids who say, I remember it was towards the end, you know, I can visualize the page. So I really want there to be choice. That's a little bit about textbooks. There are also some textbooks that are much better electronically. So there are biology textbooks, for example, where there are embedded videos. So while you're reading the text, you press on the video, it shows you what they're talking about. I think that's more powerful than a hardcover book. A lot of the ebooks, unfortunately, are literally a PDF copy of the hardcover. So they're not all better. Some are better. I still think having an ebook means you don't have to carry it, means you can't forget it. They're typically web-based, so you can log in from any device anywhere as long as you have the internet. One parent at my last school, though, said, the problem is we're in the car all the time, and my child can't access their math book because there's no internet in the car. And I thought, I hadn't thought of that problem. So this is where when we sent out the iPad letter, and we said, we don't think you need Wi-Fi on your iPad. I think it's a waste of money. But if you are a parent that feels that you live in the car, that might be a time when you say it's worth the Wi-Fi so that you can access some of your books. But other than that, I still think it's sometimes better to have the ebook version. I've also had some parents who say, I know it's an ebook version, but my kid has to kinesthetically highlight. They are a learner that has to touch it. And I said, great, here's the ISBN. Feel free to find and use one cheap on Amazon, and now you can have a hardcover too. So again, I'd like to be able to offer everyone the choice. We have 5 or 6 parent information nights coming up. So February, April, June, definitely 2 in August, and probably another one somewhere in there. So if you want to learn more, we are going to go through a lot of information there, but there's one piece that we just learned about that is exciting enough that I think the parent nights are going to be less attended now. We have figured out that we can push out paid apps through the internet and not have to do anything with your child's iTunes account. And so you can certainly put the free ones on because your child can do that without paying any money. But if we can push out the paid apps for you, that means that you don't have to give your child your credit card number, which for some parents is very appealing. Some parents have no worries. My first child was a little follower. He would never do anything without asking. My second one would have charged $4 million before I realized it. So you have to decide, how you feel about your child, but when you set up their iTunes account on their iPad, you don't have to put a credit card number in because we will be able to push out all of the paid apps for you. So we will incur the cost of the paid apps, and we will push them out. The free apps, we will ask, in the summer for you to download those just so that they're ready to go. But that kind of takes a layer out of the parent piece of the management. Anyway, at the parent info nights, we'll go over all that. We'll go over iTunes accounts. We'll go over how to download apps. We'll go over how they're used. We'll do some sample kind of teaching experiences of what it might be like for your child in the classroom. We'll go over the distractibility apps and those kind of things. So please feel free to come. I don't think you want to come to all of them. There's going to be a lot of repetitiveness. If you want to come 6 times, great, but don't think, oh my gosh, you have to make all 6. We're going to repeat information. Discounts. So a lot of parents have emailed me and said, why don't you buy them and then sell them to us at a discounted rate? Because you could buy in bulk. So we looked into it, and then we looked into it a second time, and we had the Apple representative here last week, and he said, Apple doesn't really give discounts. And I thought, I had a feeling that's what I was going to say. They never have a sale there, did you ever notice, at the Apple store? So the only discount we would get is that what they do is they say if you buy 10, you have to buy these packs. If you buy a 10-pack, one of them is free, basically. So when you divide that out, these are his words, not mine, you would save $20 per iPad. I don't think that's worth the amount of energy it would take for us to manage an Apple store. It would also mean there would be no choice within what you purchased. So we would have to buy all of one style and then pass it along to you. You can probably save more money buying it actually at a big retailer who offers, if you open up a credit card, you get 10% off, or a lot of them say things like if you purchase it, we'll give you a $100 app, towards apps and things like that. You will save more money doing that than if we did bulk purchasing. And so some people say, well, at the universities, they offer 30%. If that's happening, then the university is incurring some of that discount. It is not from Apple. So we spoke to the horse. The horse was sitting in our office, and I said, you are promising me. I went through, what about the big universities? What about, he said, Apple does not give discounts except this 10-pack deal. So hopefully that's helping you around the discounts. We are working on a website. I'm hoping to have it up before we go on winter break. It is still in its infancy, but as we learn things, we will continually put more information on the website. So everything from the Distractability app to places that you might, if we see a sale, we'll put that up on the website. Cover choices, we're trying to make that the main way that we can communicate with you about questions you may have. You can always email me, you can always, meet with us. We'll have the parent nights as well, but that would be a go-to place that you say, I know they said it, but I can't remember. And for me, I can never find that email that we sent in November, so then I have to go to my email and search iPad email. So this is one spot that it'll be a link on our main website. It'll also have its own home address, but you can always just go there for more information. So the last thing, and then I have to run in a minute, about how we envision using it. So it's really going to vary from discipline to discipline, and of course from teacher to teacher. I anticipate math probably using it the least. I think I'm also a math teacher, so I'm a little biased, but I can't imagine doing calculus problems and not writing it. There's just, even as a math teacher, when I type tests, it's a little annoying to have to insert fractions and insert braces and brackets and square root symbols, and so I can't imagine in math they will use them as much. It doesn't mean that students can't, but I don't see it integrated quite as much. I do think there's some really cool apps and there's some graphing features. There's a great app called Fluid Math, but it's $4.99. But in Fluid Math, you can use your finger, and so if you write y equals x squared plus 3, and you do this symbol, it immediately throws it up on a coordinate plane graph. So I look at things like that, and I think, depending on what you're working on, that quick, that speed for kids to be able to visualize the graph of something, that's something I would use as a math teacher. But it's not something that we would use every minute of every period, every day. So I think it's going to come and go in math. I think in foreign language it's probably going to be used heavily. I think in foreign language, when you think about the communication side and the oral piece of learning a language, which is, I think, probably the most important aspect of learning a language, the fact that they can hear their teacher's accent or they can hear natives and using that accent, I think they can also voice record themselves. So I always say when I was growing up, I don't know if this happened to you, but in foreign language class there would be the oral assessment day, and the teacher one by one would pull you out in the hall and you'd be standing there giving oral assessment while the other 25 kids were hanging from the rafters in the classroom, and then the teacher would go back in and send out so-and-so, and they would stand out in the hallway. So when I was growing up, I don't think we did many oral assessments. It was really time-consuming for teachers, and I think it was not great for the other kids. But if every night your student can record themselves repeating the vocabulary and Dropbox it to their teacher, they could be assessing them orally every day. Your child could be listening to the teacher. I also was remembering in the shower the other day about, this may not have happened to you, but I remember a cassette player and the teacher pressing the cassette, and you would listen to the two people talking, and you'd have to answer questions, and they were only going to play it twice. I'd be sweating. Now we can send that voice recording to the kids. They can put it on their headphones and put it on their iPad, and they can listen to it 10 times if they need to, instead of going, you only get 2 chances. So I think it's going to just have the biggest impact. I could be wrong, but my guess is in foreign language. So I think it'll be used heavily. I think in science, it's going to vary. There certainly are apps, but I don't think the iPad is actually as powerful because of the content apps. I think it's powerful because of the creation apps. So I don't think we're going to find an app. There actually is a great app on the elements in chemistry, so I won't use that. But we're not going to find a great app on meiosis in biology, let's say. But it does have a great camera and video. So what if, while they were dissecting something, they were videoing or even taking pictures? I don't know if you got to do this, but when I took biology, you would dissect it and you'd have to stop and draw what it looked like, and I'm also not a good drawer, so that was really not great for me. But if I could snap pictures during that dissection, and then use an app to overwrite what I thought was going on, and then voice record what I thought went on, now the teachers can assess that dissection in a way that was just not happening before when the teacher was running around trying to see how the dissections were going. So I think it's going to be in things like that you'll see science using it. I think in physics they're going to be able to take video of the car shooting off the ramp, and they're going to be able to break it down and measure things and do cool things like that. I think in humanities, it's going to be a really great tool for that immediate research. So when you're in the middle of a discussion or a debate or a project and someone says, well, what about this? Someone can go, oh, I can look that up right now because we all have this environment. Or we can all do a multimedia project because we all have these tools instead of everything just being in written form. We're still going to teach writing, and we still value writing enormously, but it is nice to have an option that we can assess kids in another way. I even think of debates, and how during a debate, I have taught history in my past, and during a debate, you're trying to navigate, like keeping some of the kids quiet, getting the debate going, trying to direct the kids, and then at the end you said you were going to grade them, and you're like, I think she was good today at the debate. But if I could be recording it and be breaking it down and reviewing it, or maybe they're going to peer review it, right? And so they're just going to record snapshots of it, and then they're going to have to watch that video and grade their partner on how they did in the debate. I see it being used that way as well. I also think kids are going to type on it. A lot of people say, how do you type on an iPad? I have a keyboard on mine. I gave up my laptop in April, so I have been laptopless. I know, see, you got it, thank you. Since April, there's only one thing I can't figure out how to do, and that is when I'm in a website that requires uploading a document, I can't figure out how to do that on my iPad. It always wants to pull up my pictures when I upload. Other than that, there is nothing I have. Now, I'm not a computer programmer, and I'll be the first to tell you an iPad is not a tool if you are a programmer. But the majority of the work that our students do all day is not programming. We will have computers for kids that are in the programming class. So if your child likes to type, I think buying a keyboard would be a great idea. If your child likes to hunt and peck, they would probably use the one that's on the screen. And parents say, oh, they can't really type on that. And I say, have you seen kids text? I mean, they cannot even look up, and they can be texting on one of those keyboards that's this big. So I think you have to look at your child and say to them, what do you think you need? And that's part of the reason that we're not in school-owned devices. This is a really personal device, and we want you to pick the one that fits your child's need. If they want a mini because they want it to be able to fit in their, I don't know what, pocket, purse, whatever, then get the mini. If your child wants a full screen because they like it bigger, then get the full screen. If they're going to put music on it, get the one with the memory. If they're not going to put music on it, you can get, a 16 memory. So it's a personal device because we want you to be able to personalize it. I'm out of breath, and I've got 5 minutes. Thank you. I've got 5 minutes before I have to run to lower school, so I'm happy to answer questions until I have to go. Yes?
I feel like I'm sort of good with moving with technology, but first of all, it sounds terrific, and I think you're absolutely right. It's great that the school's going to teach the kids how to deal in the world. There's a lot for them to learn and for us to learn, and I have a daughter who's a junior, so she's going to be a senior. Are you phasing this in? How are you going to, how are you going to teach the kids? A kid that's in 9th grade has a lot more time to learn how to do this. A kid that's going to be a senior, it's a much more condensed period. And what support, and where do we go for support? Is it through you, through the teachers, through the technology department?
So I think you're right. It's certainly, is it snowing? Yeah. I think certainly, when you think of our kindergartners, imagine what they're going to leave with in 13 years, but you're right, rising seniors won't get as much. I think obviously we're going to focus on what we think the most important things are. I think we're already teaching some of it. I mean, even though we're not one-to-one, we certainly are, I think, always trying to teach kids how to be safe, how to do quality research on the internet, and things like that. But I think we're probably going to prioritize and do things through advisory and through large groups. So I'm hoping that they still get something out of it. I think if there's something particularly you're worried about that you think the school isn't doing, I hope you'll let us know.
But I mean, they may know how to use a computer, and you're teaching them how to use the internet, but the physical device to learn how to underline or to take notes, or where is that? Is that whose responsibility is it to teach the kids
So
that, and how will that happen?
the best integration happens when it's there's a phrase called just in time versus just in case. And I think a lot of mistakes that we make in education are just in case. So we say, we're going to teach you how to needlepoint, just in case you decide to become a professional needlepointer. Instead of when a kid comes forward and says, I want to learn how to needlepoint, we go, great, let's teach you how to needlepoint. So I hope that in English class, when they're teaching how to read a novel and do guided reading, they'll say, this is how you underline, instead of an intro course, that then we go, we taught you that, and they go, I don't remember. And that's what you find with isolated technology classes, if you look at what happens. We teach it to them, we teach them all Excel, and then 2 months later in science class, they go, we're going to make an Excel spreadsheet, because we don't know how. So I'm hoping it's happening just in time, right? Just when they need it, they're being taught the skills. But I'm not saying we won't miss something. I'm feeling really needed right now, so that's great. I don't know who to choose. Go ahead.
So just my want to teach our kids to be good writers so they're prepared to write a paper, we do that. If we don't teach them how to do this in college, there's no way you can take notes as fast as these lectures are speaking, and you have to have a laptop in college. And so we'd be doing our kids a disservice if they didn't know how to do it, and they'll be very prepared when they get to college. So that being said, I was glad to hear you say you can pick what size. My son's been bringing his computer for the last 2 years to school, his laptop, and it's helped him enormously. He's incredibly organized with it. It's synced, it's a Mac product. He also has an iPad. Everything is synced. He can access everything. Is there any reason why they can't continue to take notes if they have an Apple laptop and use that
Sure,
instead of
you're welcome to bring a laptop as well. I think my concern is if we have some kids that don't have iPads, there will be things that are iPad specific, and I don't want those kids to not be able to participate. So if you already have both, he's welcome to bring both. But and I come from a school that had both devices, and what I found was you could do more things on an iPad than you could do with the camera.
But like if it's a Mac, though, it has the camera. If it's an
Right,
Apple,
it's just not, I mean, it's not quite the same. You don't have the apps on a MacBook or a MacBook Air, an Air and a Pro, the way that they are on an iPad. And so from a sense of, if the teacher says, I want everyone to do this, if 3 kids have laptops that you can't do that on, now the teacher is going to have to, stop what they're doing, or the teacher might say, well, then let's not do it at all, because not all of you can do the exact same thing. And so I think it's really important to be in one platform. So he's welcome to bring the laptop as well, but I think there are times when they may need an iPad.
I asked him about that, but if you have an iPhone, the apps on the iPad are exactly the same as the iPhone. So could he download those apps on his iPhone and it would be synced with his laptop? I'm just saying.
No, that's a good, I haven't thought of it. I'm chuckling because I'm thinking that's a good point.
Because I asked him that on the way, so I'm going to ask you about
Yeah.
the computer, and he said everything I can do on my iPad, because he's a tech wizard, and
Right,
everything
right.
he can do on his iPad, he can do on his iPhone with the apps.
I think you're right to a point. I would say, like, iMovie is a great example. iMovie on the phone is not quite as robust on the pad, and by the way, it's much more robust on a MacBook. So I don't want to say yes yet, because I want to make sure I think through all the different things that we might use it for. But I'm happy to think about it. Yep.
I just have a question about how teachers are being trained to use these tools pedagogically, because I think it's great to get all this stuff, and I'm actually in higher ed and I love it, but then how do you actually build it into a lesson so that it's pedagogical and it's valuable and
Right, so, I mean, we're doing it in a variety of ways. We're trying to do individual, we're trying to do group PD, we're trying to do, videos, so we're trying to hit the teachers in every possible way we can think of. I think the mistake people make is when they say, well, I'm doing this lesson and now I have to incorporate technology, instead of being inspired by the technology and going, now I thought of a great lesson.
Right.
And so I think part of it is, right now the teachers are not in a remote environment, and so until you're in it, sometimes it's hard to imagine what's possible. And so I'm also hoping that we can get sets for the spring, a class set, that a teacher could have a class set for a week, and then dabble in what that's like. But part of it is also just, I don't know if you're familiar with the integration levels, but there are kind of different camps of people that believe there are different levels of technology integration, and I think level 1 is just called substitution. So you're just typing it instead of handwriting it, or that's like the most basic level of integration. I think if that's all we get to next year, that's still an improvement over nothing. But I think some teachers are going to jump in at a higher level, right? And they're going to totally remodify the assignment because now they can use multimedia. So I think teachers are going to have different, we have different kinds of teachers now. I think they're going to have different levels of integration.
But you're working with them too.
We are. There's tech training every other week. There's, we do individual things. So we're trying to hit everybody else. Yes.
Sorry, I'm just, since I spend all this time with the upper school teachers, I think the thing that's going to be the big change is the one-to-one environment. It's not the academic technology environment. So there are lots and lots of things happening in the classroom right now that take advantage of the kind of technology that Shannon's talking about. So our foreign language students do get flipped classroom lessons in the target language by the teacher. Our music students get MP3s of the parts and chorus that they can learn at home. So it's not really that there's no technology being used now in the upper school. In fact, I think there's a pretty exciting list when you kind of drill down to it. So I think the big change is that it will be one-to-one technology where everybody will have access to the same piece of technology all the time. But it's, I worry a little bit when it starts to sound as though, we're all turning on a computer for the first time here. In fact, as you know, and I am an English teacher, and it's been a really, really, really long time since we wrote a paper in anything but a word processing environment. And that makes a huge difference, right? Because you revise, you know, if you're my age, you know that you typed the paper and then you got some suggestions and then you thought, it's not really worth it to me to retype this whole paper, so forget it. You know? So it's been, you know, really has been a much more technologically rich environment maybe than it is always sounding like with the one-to-one initiative. So I just wanted to say that.
Yes. I'm already late. I said I was doing it at 9:15.
We'll email you.
Okay, yes, can you just email me? And I said before we started, I'm happy to meet again. I'm happy to have a meeting where you can just grill me on other questions, and I'm gonna go home and really think about the phone, because that's a great idea.
I want to say, my son's been using his iPad since middle school, so it's been invaluable and a lot more apps. But he got our other son an iPad mini, thinking that he could use it this year. Well, it was stolen within 1 month, right? But then when we did buy it, iPad minis are not the same as iPads. So just so you know that when you're implementing the technology, you should really look at that.
I mean, there's 2 operating systems. So right now, the iPad mini and the iPad 2 have the same operating system and the same processor. And the iPad Air and the mini with Retina have the same processor. So they are identical, except there are 2 versions out right now. So there are 2 different processors, but the machinery is exactly the same in those 2 different ones. It's just the screen size. I mean, maybe you have a more specific example, but
Well, when I was reading the emails and people were talking about where you purchase these things, you should really give parents that information before they purchase, like what system you're going to purchase and what.
yeah, and I think that's why, and I really have to go, but in the email, if you already own a 2, you can certainly bring it, but we are worried that in 2 years, the processor that's in the 2 could become outdated enough that things are not going to work as seamlessly on it. So if you're purchasing new, we would certainly drive you to the new processor, but if you already own, I think in year 1 at least, and maybe in year 2, it will still work perfectly fine. And again, we're probably not, I mean, it sounds like your son is what I call a heavy user, and so heavy users tend to find the differences more, so it also depends on how much your child is going to use it. So maybe the old processor isn't going to impact them as much. You know, I'm still on a 2, and it's starting to just be a little bit slow in some ways, but it still works. So, but that's a great point. And if you go on the on the Apple site, there's a really easy chart. Click on iPads. There's 4 columns, and it goes through the exact differences between the 4 that are being sold right now.
There you go.
I'm gonna walk to my coat.
So just a couple quick announcements. The Martin Luther King Day project for the upper school is going to be at the Fishtown Recreation Center. They're going to be cleaning up, removing graffiti, and painting a mural. That's from 9 to 2 on January 20th. And then the first information session for the iPad program will be February 6th at 7 p.m. So just again, Bill and Lori have agreed to stay for a few more minutes. If you want to, but I was just going to say they're going to stay after if.
Can I ask an open question?
Sure.
So Lori, for the student evaluations, you said they're anonymous. Last year, the students,
Right.
they could link.
In some cases, they were not anonymous last year in the sense that kids didn't put their names on them, but they could be tracked. And so this year they will be anonymous.
They will be anonymous.
Yes, that's
And I
it.
think we need to reassure the students that. 'cause-
Yes, we will.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming.
Hi.
You have one.
Suggesting that there is
Yeah, I know.
Right, right, right.